Welcome to another episode of the Chris Rod Mac Show. And like every week, we talk about the latest development in AI. We speak to fantastic guests that we have in the show to talk about their ventures within the space and also obviously ask them for advice and their opinion on the different developments. And today I have the honor to have Rod and Max, my co-hosts in the show, and as well Vitalii Duuk, who is the CEO and founder of Dynamiq. Hi, everybody.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Amazing. And maybe just to start it off a little bit, as far as I understood what Dynamiq does is the way I imagine it is what you see is what you get type of toolkit. I think in the early days we had, if a non-technical person wanted to build a website, they would just move around some boxes and then basically publish it. And the way Dynamiq at least looked to me is similar from a mechanical point of view. So if you wanted to deploy an AI product or feature, you could also link different databases in a very low code manner and essentially build for an AI application in the business space. But I don't want to explain it just myself. We can just ask Vitalii, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit more about what Dynamiq is.
Sure. So I'm Vitalii. I'm the founder and CEO at Dynamiq. I've been, as a short intro, I've been in this data science space for many, many years. Been doing this for over, I would say, 10 plus or 11 now years. But if we get to Dynamiq and what we do, the idea of Dynamiq is to create this operating platform or end-to-end platform that allows you to build GenAI specific applications. Our primary focus is on GenAI subset of the AI tasks. And the idea is to simplify that kind of entire journey. So from prototyping to deployment to observability to enabling some guardrails, connecting to your data sources, and a few other things beside that. So yes, we do have this kind of low code builder that is at the core of the platform that has a lot of pre-built blocks. So you don't need to say every time you need to connect to your vector database to pull some documents, you don't need to kind of code it from scratch. And there's plenty of others. And then we also support the ability to extend the functionality of the platform just by plugging in your own Python code. So if you see there's something custom that you want to add, you can do this because our audience is still kind of engineers and data scientists, so we want to make it usable for them. Not everyone likes full no-code tools. But yeah, in general, we want to simplify everything that is related to building, like I say, conversational applications. And we do provide you a lot of things that you don't need to build from scratch.
Thank you for this. And perhaps let's take it a step back before we really deep dive into Dynamiq and maybe also how the product is different from other competitors out there in the market. But why don't you give us a little bit more about your background? You were starting to say that this is also not your first time dealing with data and Gen or AI at the least. Tell us, what did you do before? How did you get to this idea around Dynamiq?
So I've been in this space for a while. So I've been working also on a lot of internal machine learning platforms back in the day. So it's a couple of companies before. We've been building internal tooling for machine learning stuff, so helping internal teams to deploy machine learning models to production. And that's where this kind of passion for the space stems from. I used to work for a company called Careem in the Middle East that was later acquired by Uber. So it's a ride-hailing type of business where we've been operating in 14 countries, 50 million users. And at that time, I was in charge of the machine learning platform and a couple of other platforms. So we also built an A/B testing platform out there, the feature store. So a lot of learnings around how to build platforms comes from that times as well, collaborating a lot with Uber folks as well. So I have a lot of insight into how Uber machine learning stack is built. And over time, obviously, I transitioned from that company, moved to other ventures, but always had this idea that if I'm going to build yet another startup, because I've done some startups before, it's probably going to be something around dev tools and specifically tools for data scientists, because this is the space that I understand well. And of course, with GenAI boom and everything that is happening right now in the industry, and a couple of, let's say, customer discovery calls and things like that, realize it's probably what's missing. So still, even by now, we've been doing this for almost a year now. I still believe that the market is very nascent for, let's say, GenAI dev tools. So it's kind of how the idea came up, and yeah.
And maybe on this note, what is the difference between deploying for GenAI versus maybe usual AI? Or let me ask this question a little bit bigger. Like, what type of challenges or pain points or barriers do enterprises have when it comes to adopting generative AI solutions?
So I think there's definitely kind of like a paradigm shift when it comes to Gen AI applications and, let's say, more traditional machine learning apps that we've been building for a while. And the realization came when I was thinking that a lot of models that we used to build before in the early days, like sentiment analysis or like sentiment classification models, we used to just kind of build one specifically tailored classification model that just does the text classification, or like entity extraction, or a lot of these similar tasks. Now it's basically a foundational LLM model that can perform all these tasks, and with agentic stuff on top of it can be even more complex. So the realization came is that with this new kind of paradigm on how you build these applications, you need new set of tools, because everything or most of the things are now revolving around prompts, around, let's say, fine-tuning of these LLMs, around doing RAG techniques or similar-ish techniques where you kind of pull internal data and add it to the context. So that's when the realization came that it's going to be way different than, let's say, training a logistic regression on some of the data, deploying it, and doing this way. Of course, these classic ML models will remain, but I think a bigger chunk of new stuff is going to be built around LLMs. So that's the main challenge. The tools to kind of effectively build applications that revolve around LLMs, around prompts, around stitching together some workflows didn't exist. So that's the main challenge. And of course, the way you monitor these applications in production is different, right? So the way you deploy them as well, it's kind of slightly different. And that's something that we've realized and started kind of building from the ground up. Obviously, you can build on top of your classic ML tech stack, but it's going to be probably too restrictive, or you will try to squeeze everything that you want to build around GenAI into this kind of old school ML paradigm. We've decided to just do this from scratch and then see how it's going to look like.
And Ali, you're building a platform. So this means there is so much functionality involved, and this takes time. So when you were starting, you already know which features, which specific functionality you want to have from the get-go. What was here like your decision-making process in saying, hey, this is what we should do first, and this is what should come next? Did you have something already in mind, or would you just go around and saw what could work, what works less?
So in the early days, we already had a pretty good idea of how the product will look like, because, as I said, so at the time I was working as part of the other startup that was heavy on GenAI, and we've been doing a lot of things around stitching together like different LLMs, using it in different parts of the business. Then I've already been kind of aware that other businesses are, of course, integrating LLMs into their business processes. So I did a bunch of customer discovery calls to understand what specific use cases, what are the challenges. And then we've built this idea of how the platform will look like. Of course, not everything that we have right now existed in the original vision. I guess specifically the agentic part, like LLM agents, this came along the way when we started already building. Initial idea is that, there's going to be a way to build a workflow based on LLMs and then do all the things around observability and valuations and things like that. And then, let's say agentic part came later. The RAG part as well came slightly later in that journey. But the vision was always to have everything under one roof, and this is where we're moving right now, because I believe that the market is right now is very dispersed. So there's a lot of tools. It's a very fragmented space, which is not that great for the end user, because even as an engineer, of course, a lot of engineers like to stitch together things, but it becomes a challenge. Like if you need to stitch together, 5, 6 different tools, something specific for observability, something specific for evaluations, something else for RAG, then it's just a lot of moving parts. And our vision from kind of day one was that let's try to unify it in one platform. But of course, this is a developing space. We're like every day kind of trying to see what should be tailored, what should be changed. Like the latest thing that we've added that was not even on the radar back in the days, this agentic memory, so ability for LLM agents to have memory, and now it's kind of one of the features of the platform as well.
And Vitalii, I think you're mentioning a really important point, which is the space is so dynamic. I mean, just where we were like a year ago versus today is a complete game changer in terms of features, capabilities, in terms of LLMs, and obviously the AI agentic space. And you were mentioning also the customer discovery calls to really shape this platform and also prioritize some of the features, understanding the requirements and pain points. And I was wondering, could you maybe share with us and with our audience a success story, or maybe a bit more of a tangible example, how a company or an enterprise has used Dynamiq and what they built, and how sort of what the benefit was to use Dynamiq?
Yeah, so I mean, there's plenty of these examples, but I mean, there's this one company which is a B2B SaaS platform around like Series B. So the way they've used, and they're probably one of the most extensive users of Dynamiq, they've built close to like 5, 6 different use cases on top of Dynamiq, which are essentially GenAI features in their SaaS. So from very small things like now we have this feature to summarize some of the documents that our users upload, to using LLMs and stuff like that to replace the old school OCR that they've been using, and do more structured text extraction, to all the way to more complex customer facing assistant or customer support chatbot, to some internal, say, HR copilot. So the way they've used Dynamiq essentially deploy all these features in a matter of hours and days, instead of spending maybe months to actually develop this thing, because they have very limited capacity. It's not like a 5,000 people company. They have just a couple of engineers that are just focused on this GenAI space. So they don't need to build things from scratch. And we've kind of managed to help them to cover all these use cases. And they have, like, out of the box now, they have the observability part. They have the ability to do evaluations over time. So when they change something in these specific workflows or applications, you can also run evals and see how things change. They can have an easy way to replace models. So they don't build around just OpenAI or just Anthropic. They have the ability to quickly test whatever comes up on the market and how does it perform on their specific workflow. So that's, I would say, how pretty much every company uses us. Maybe someone starts with just one use case and then moves to more of the use cases. But the types of use cases, I would say there's three buckets. There's customer-facing chatbots that people build. There is internal copilots for your internal teams. And there's also a big chunk of back office automations or some workflows that run in the background where you use LLMs or now agents as well.
What I was wondering was, what's the pitch so how do you go to companies and present Dynamiq? Because although we were discussing this is a very nascent space, everything's very new. At the same time, so many vendors have so many lofty claims, or users themselves isn't often not clear enough, for example, what tool A does with regards to, for example, what OpenAI is offering with their ChatGPT and so on. So there is often a lot of confusion in the market. Often also the buyers are not up to date what's out there. So when you go to a company, how do you present yourself? How do you differentiate yourself, and what's the response?
Sorry, just one before you jump in that, Rod. I think this is tied to that because based on the customer conversation, one thing that I'm quite interested in, I think Vitalii, based on your experiences, is that you mentioned that you've spoken to clients. I wonder what is the most surprising, unique insight that based on the conversations that you have had with your customer, and that I guess indirectly will also tie to what Rod has in mind, which is how do you go and pitch yourself? So I just thought it would be quite interesting.
Yeah, in terms of, I think, unique insights, I don't know if it's unique anymore, but what a lot of people don't realize, especially sometimes myself, because I'm so immersed into this GenAI space, right? And every day, what I do and the team does is just like keep an eye on what's new in this industry. We don't really sometimes realize that people outside of this, they're not as advanced, right? Haven't seen, for example, that many companies that, let's say, use graph RAG, right? That probably been out there for a couple months or more than 6 months. Like this is something that is super cutting edge, and not everyone is using this in production. So same thing comes to other things in GenAI space. Like not every company like. There's this discussion that I had with one of our potential customers. We've been pitching them the platform. They have some use cases, but then they came back and they were like, look, maybe one of the features that we need is the centralized enterprise access to ChatGPT. So our team can just use ChatGPT through one centralized interface. And of course, you can do this with ChatGPT Enterprise. And this is something that is also part of the platform, which might be even cheaper than ChatGPT Enterprise because we're operating on top of the API. So API is generally more cheaper. But like that's the thing. Like not everyone is on the forefront and using the cutting edge stuff. So you need to. That kind of boils down to some of the challenges that you need to educate a lot these customers. You need to not just explain the benefit of the platform. Sometimes you also need to explain, where in the business they might use LLMs and how they can streamline their operations. Maybe provide some examples or reference cases from others. So that's the main challenge, because when we pitch the platform, first we need to show what's possible, like what use cases you can build, and then show them how easy it is to do this stuff. So if you were to build this from scratch, it's going to take you, let's say, a couple months. You also need someone who's quite advanced with all these technologies to build this from scratch. And with Dynamiq, you can probably do this in a much faster way. If you have like a couple of engineers or just even one engineer that can operate a platform, then you can deploy your customer-facing chatbot in a matter of hours if it's something pretty basic, right? But you can start realizing the value. You can start seeing these GenAI use cases really make sense for your business. And then you can obviously compare how long it takes to do this from scratch on your own, and then how long it takes to do this on the platform. So yeah, to summarize, I think the major point is to first show the value of GenAI and how LLMs can be used, because again, not everyone is up to speed. Not everyone is kind of using it. A lot of folks have not even tried that, surprisingly. There are some businesses that haven't used anything yet, and then show them, okay, the platform really simplifies everything that you need. And also for some of the most sophisticated users, they already understand that building something on top of LLMs is not just integrating OpenAI directly into your backend, because then you have a lot of other challenges. The first thing that comes up is like, I need some tracing. I need to log every request, right? Then I need to probably have the ability to quickly replace and test OpenAI versus Anthropic versus some other models. The third thing is evaluations. Like, how do I have some quantitative measures around what I've built, right? Because in a lot of cases, it's very challenging to assess this. Then how do I connect my data sources? And all these things, we've already solved it for you. So you don't need to build it. So that's a pitch for more sophisticated users, that everything you need to operate this in production is already there.
You're mentioning that very often companies require education. I want to harken back to that. What do you feel they do not yet understand, or which gaps do they have? What is it that they need first to understand and basically grasp before they can say, hey, Dynamiq, this is the solution that I need for my business?
I think what I explain is that first, you need to make sure they understand how the technology at large works, right? So how LLMs work, what they're capable of and what they're not. Because a lot of people also kind of mistakenly think that with LLMs, you can do like regression tasks, right? Or do some sort of predictive analytics. So this is not the case, right? Maybe someone is working on some different foundational models that are capable of this, but if you go to, classic OpenAI models or Anthropic models, they're not going to be capable of this. So educating inside the organization what's possible, what's not, and then kind of let them brainstorm with them where the business processes where this can be implemented, and then probably assess the dollar value, because as everywhere, there's something that is nice to have and something that might bring them or save them a ton of money. So that's where typically the misunderstanding, miscommunication happens. Either they have very jacked up expectations, thinking that this is gonna just replace every single machine learning model that we have, or they're not even aware what's the ROI, what's the cost saving or revenue opportunity. So helping, I think the easiest way is to explain, show the use cases, what's possible, show the capabilities of the technology, and that let everyone in the organization kind of be involved and brainstorm, bring some ideas, and then you stack rank them based on some ROI potential, and then start probably either with like a low-hanging fruit that is easy to build and implement, because what's important as well is to get to production fast and start showing the value. Because if something takes months or close to a year to get to production, maybe people will not see the value at all. Like they will think it's too complex, too hard. So I think very important thing is to start showing like quick results, quick wins, and then increase the complexity of these use cases over time.
And Vitalii, it is early stage for you guys. I think you guys are at a pre-seed funding round. And as you mentioned, it's a lot of education you probably need to do, not necessarily on Dynamiq, but generally what is GenAI, AI agents. I think there's a lot of gaps in knowledge. And obviously it's a really new technology, which takes time for people to really understand. And I think what we've always been discussing in the show, and it always creeps up in any type of business conversation around AI, is obviously the whole space around AI security, control, compliance, etc. How, or what is your view on this? Or do you feel like this has been a question coming up from maybe the customers you've spoken to, and how do you guys address it?
Indeed, I think these days, especially over the past couple of years, the point around sovereign AI and data privacy, data residency is a really hot topic. So it definitely comes up quite often, and that's why the early architectural decision that we have decided to make is build as much as we can in-house, so don't rely too much on like external things. That's why we also have open sourced part of what we do. So we have our own agentic open source framework, but also the entire platform doesn't really have dependencies on a specific hyperscaler or a specific type of infra. So we're pretty agnostic, and we can deploy also in the infrastructure of the customer. So in addition to our, let's say, cloud-based offering that we have that you can kind of go and sign up and start building, we also do offer the on-premise setup. So whether in your private cloud or even bare metal servers, so that way you can ensure that data doesn't leave the your premises. And we do also have a feature of like being able to deploy your private instances of some of the open source models. So if you don't want to use, let's say, OpenAI or other models, which are cloud-based, and you can take, say, Llama 3.2, deploy it in your own infra using Dynamiq, and then use it as the drop-in replacement for your LLM agents and things like that. So the combination of these things, like the ability to offer on-premise with like a full air-gapped capabilities where, if needed, you can also, if you're, let's say, building a RAG use case, through Dynamiq, you can easily deploy a vector DB like VVAT in a couple of clicks. So that way you have like everything in your premises, like from an LLM that might be some open source model like Mistral, Llama, and so on and so forth, all the way to like a vector DB that is running in your infrastructure, and all the workflows, including some of the features like PAI detection, prompt injection detection that we've also built as part of the platform. But everything kind of runs within the same infrastructure, and this way you can ensure that nothing leaves your premises. But again, it's not for everyone. I think a lot of companies, when they come to us and they say they want this, they don't realize that it's quite costly to run LLMs on your own infrastructure. So sometimes you need to make a trade-off. And for some of them, let's say if we're talking about the European customers, there are options to, let's say, use OpenAI hosted in Europe, for example. But that's kind of in general how we try to approach this data privacy and security questions.
And maybe on that note, what are other, let's say, questions you always get from customers that you want to diffuse or talk about here in the show to really reduce, question marks on using Dynamiq?
I mean, so there's plenty of questions that come up all the time. Some of them are quite unique because they're related to the specific business of this particular customer. I think in a lot of cases, people ask like how we're different from other solutions. Let's say how we're different from LangChain, and the short, quick answer is that we're trying to build this kind of end-to-end platform. So everything that I mentioned already, everything you need from evaluations to tracing to observability to RAG components to even deployment of vector DBs is already part of the platform. So something that kind of others still don't really offer. I think we're still uniquely positioned in that way, where providing everything out under one roof. And maybe it's slightly ahead of time, because definitely people are still playing around with like individual tooling just for tracing or individual tooling just for evaluations. But I'm 100% sure or 200% sure that over time, there's going to be more and more demand for this kind of end-to-end solution that we're already building, because there's no need to have everything dispersed, right? There's no need to have like so many tools, because it just makes it complex. So that's kind of the main thing that comes up. And I think another one is around like, what do we need to get started? And I guess what we are looking for, and some of the companies that we approach, is that they should have still some technical capability, because unfortunately, we're not a full no-code solution for non-technical people. So we're still catering to technical folks, engineers, data scientists, machine learning folks. So you need to have certain technology background to be able to use it. If you're non-technical, then I'm not saying it's impossible, but you'll have hard times to understand all the concepts that we have in the platform.
Vitalii, I think the better phrasing is not yet no code, right? Maybe in the future there might be an opportunity for that.
Yeah, I think the way I see this is that we probably will have two modes, because we still want to cater to engineers, and this is kind of my background, coming from engineering background. So I think we'll have these maybe two modes of the platform, where you have a light mode where it's more no code and easy to use, and then you can switch to advanced or hardcore mode, where you can write your own implementations if you want, and stuff like that. But that's definitely how I see this in the future. That might be the ability to switch between two modes, and then use it in the pretty light mode, where everything is pre-built, everything is drag and drop and easily configurable. And we're already doing some of that stuff as we speak, because we see a lot of demand actually from non-technical folks as well.
I think just to follow up on that, right? When it comes to like customers, you mentioned that they need to at least have some sort of like technical capability. I'm just wondering if there are other, I would say, characteristics that you look for within a company that would be an ideal customer for you. And the reason why I ask that is, maybe someone out there listening to this podcast might be interested. They're thinking about it. So I thought it would be good, right? Is there a size that you go for, a type of companies that you go for? Just wanted to understand more on that.
If I were to describe, I think it's typically a Series A, B, maybe even C sometimes company that is pretty tech enabled. So it can be either B2B or B2C, but they should be kind of digital and have either their SaaS platform or consumer-facing app or something like that. That is kind of actively looking, or maybe already adding some of these bits and pieces of LLM-based features into their application, because we see that this is a space where we already can show a lot of use cases how others have done this, and in general these companies are quite fast to adopt, right? Because we do also work with some enterprises, and we have a lot of enterprises in the pipeline that are quite huge. But you know how it is. Enterprise sales is quite a long game. It takes forever. Sometimes as a startup, you also have challenges because you cannot go through the procurement that fast, right? Sometimes they ask too much that sometimes you cannot provide these things. So that's why this kind of Series A, B, C company, which is tech-enabled, tech-first, is probably the ideal ICP, because first, they can realize the value quite quickly, and they typically iterate quite fast.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think tech-enabled business, Series A, B, and C. Because I'm just thinking, right, there will be, for example, some sort of more traditional businesses. They might have some IT technical capabilities, but they might not be there yet. If you get what I mean. So it'll be quite interesting to see. Yeah.
Vitalii, we were so saying that for many companies and some of you customers and potential customers, is often hard to grasp what's the difference between here ChatGPT and what Dynamiq is offering. Is it possible for you to show us how Dynamiq looks like, so quickly do a walkthrough? I'm sure that for our viewers it might be much more tangible, and then they can realize, okay, this is how Dynamiq is totally different from something like Claude or a ChatGPT.
Yeah, sure. I can definitely quickly share just do in Dynamiq right now, and here's the first kind of major feature is around the low code builder. So we have a set of pre-built templates already that can help you to quickly start, and there are agentic stuff. There's regular RAG. So if we, let's say, try with the RAG workflow, we show you how you can do a basic type of RAG with like query refinement step, where you use an LLM to refine the query, have the embedder model You have the retriever part that takes documents from Pinecone in this case, and then you have the re-ranking step, and then the final question answering LLM-based prompt where we add the documents that we've retrieved into the context and try to answer the question of the user. And you can kind of play around. The good thing is that all these blocks, right? So if we talk about the LLM block, you are not just forced to use OpenAI. You can quickly drag and drop and, let's say, use any of the integrations. So you can try open source models from Grok, you can try Gemini, you can use Anthropic, you can use some of these fastest inference endpoints from Sambanova or Cerebrus. So really easy to replace something. Same with, let's say, vector DB integrations. We have pretty much everything that is out there on the market right now. So you can replace Pinecone with something else, and everything is unified. It's the same thing for embedders. So you can use embedding models from a variety of providers, re-ranking mechanisms, ability to use, let's say, unstructured files. But then another thing is, as I said, around agents. So we do have, this is all built on top of our open source framework. You have the ability to, define agents. You can add tools to these agents, so it can execute them, and you define like a role of this agent, like how it operates, and as well you specify which LLM it's powered by. You can enable memory as well. So if you, let's say, want to use short-term memory or long-term memory stored in the vector DB, easy to use, enabling like streaming and things like that. These agents also capable of like working with files. So that's kind of single agent stuff. Then you also have the multi-agent orchestration, where there is an orchestrator that has a couple of agents working together, managed by like a manager. So yeah, it just makes it quite easily configurable. But in case you don't have everything that you want, you can always just plug in, let's say, pure Python block and write your own implementation here. And then when you're ready and you, let's say, want to deploy stuff, then all these workflows, they become a part of the REST API endpoint. You have like the ability to monitor the cost, the usage, the latency. You will have all traces available, so you can debug things. You can see, what happened. Let's say this retrieval step, how did it perform? Like what documents did you retrieve, and deploy, redeploy new versions. There's many things out there, but yeah, you also have the playground that allows you to actually compare, let's say, in more ad hoc manner, Anthropic with OpenAI and other models have the fine-tuning capability. If you want these open source models, you have the knowledge base that allows you to ingest files from different sources like Google Drive, or ingest them programmatically through Python or other languages, or just upload them manually. And we take care of the pre-processing endpoint. So everything from pre-processing these files, chunking, vectorization, storage. You can still edit this stuff, but we do provide you with like a blueprint to follow. So it makes it easier. And then the last part is the evals. So you can define metrics, either like using LLM as a judge or some predefined metrics that we've created. You can upload data sets or create data sets with your ground truth on which you want to evaluate your workflows. And then you can run these, like compare, let's say, two different workflows, and you will have the quantitative measure of like how each one of them performs. So it's a bit more factual in that way. So yeah, that's kind of how the platform looks like. And as I said, for those who want to build completely isolated environment, you can deploy open source LLMs in just a couple of clicks. You can also deploy vector DBs in a couple of clicks. So it makes it quite easy to use if you want to build this kind of fully air-gapped environment. So yeah, that's kind of quick round around the platform.
Vitaly,
It's amazing. I love it.
the way that I see it, Vitaly, is that it looks very sophisticated. It has so many tools and functionality, but it also looks like you really need to know what you want to do, right? So it's not, let's say, for a business user in a marketing department, but it's really for like a senior data scientist who already understand all these concepts and say, okay, now instead of I go and code it myself, and maybe I develop something that might not be performant, maybe I do something that might be wrong, I use here Dynamiq, and then I can do this in a quicker and maybe more reliable manner. Is that a fair depiction?
Yeah, as I said, so definitely not for business users. Sometimes, because we have self-onboarding, and sometimes we see when people sign up and how they use it. And definitely business users, they struggle because you really need to know like what to do and how to do. And this is typically engineers, data scientists that know this. So indeed, we're not really kind of targeting business users unless, we're talking budgets with them. But yeah, the end user should be technical 100%, at least at this point. As I said, there might be a way for us in the future to just simplify it, and maybe you'll have just a bunch of agents that you can use as is, and if you want to customize it, then your team can go and customize it. But for now, pretty technical.
And Vitalii, I think this is great. Thank you so much for a demo. I think this just makes everything a bit more tangible and how the user actually interacts with the platform. And obviously, as you mentioned before, it really saves time for a user not to have to implement everything manually, but actually starting off on a platform, being able to flexibly use different types of LLMs and also build on top of what you have already built. So really saving time and saving money because of this. And I think with that, we're actually coming to an end of this show. But I thought maybe for the last 5 minutes or so, what I think the audience obviously always curious about is sort of like, what is your learning from maybe this 1 year that you've been in this space? If you have an advice for any starting founders, that'd be really, really great to share.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's plenty of learnings, to be honest. And if we focus specifically on founders, I think the persistence part is crucial, because if you give up too fast or too early, then you're not going to be able to survive in this space. You need to be really persistent, focus on the long-term game, because whenever I talk sometimes to VCs, like obviously everyone is saying, yeah, it's an interesting space, but it's really crowded. There's a lot of things happening. What I believe myself is that if you remain in this space for long, then you will definitely succeed. There's no world where I see myself doing this for many years and not being like successful in this space. So I believe that persistence and playing the long-term game is definitely a key, and that's something that you need to be prepared for, because everything is changing so fast. But I think if you spend enough time with customers, enough time in the markets, you will be able to distill what's relevant, what's not, just kind of remain in that space, solve real problems for users, and the success will come essentially. I would say that's the main learning. There's obviously small tactical ones that everyone is saying that, but like you need to be able to iterate fast, right? You cannot afford spending months to deliver and ship something. You really need to be able to quickly iterate and show the value to the customers, especially because things change so fast. So I think one simple example is that probably in the early days of the platform, we put a lot of bets on fine-tuning and thought that this is going to be the major thing. These days, I see less demand for fine-tuning, to be honest. So we see less customer pool from that side, like because there's so many models that came up. Models are getting better, and a lot of things, or 90% of the things, can be fixed by adding some agentic RAG, or other similar technologies. So you don't really need to fine tune models, because again, hosting these models is quite expensive. So that's why, being agile and fast is quite crucial. And I don't think it helps if you're like holding to your like assumptions for long. You need to be very, very adaptable, especially when it comes to what customers need, because
Definitely.
changing.
Vitalii, I love your obsession and grit, or what you call persistence, and really great to see that demo. And if our listeners want to reach out to you, maybe get a private demo even, how can they reach you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Vitalii Duuk, or go to our website, getdynamiq.ai, and book a demo there. But yeah, pretty much very responsive on every single channel where you can find me.
Amazing. We're really, really happy that you had a bit of time to come onto the show. Thank you so much. And if you are interested, want to comment and reach out to us, please subscribe to our newsletter and follow us on our channels. Thank you guys for listening, and see you next time.
Thank you. See you. Bye-bye.